All right, so we're back. And one thing that I know several of the single sisters were concerned about is having a family. And I went through that big time in my 30s, and I pursued IUI, or intrauterine insemination. Some people called it artificial insemination back then. I know that you recently dipped your toes into that water. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I had started to think after my last relationship ended, which now was in 2018, the fall of 2018. Then I started to think, okay, I don't think, and even with that person, I still didn't think that that was a person that I wanted to have a family with. And it's just, it gets so hard when you meet someone and you're already over 40 and you feel like you want children, then everything feels like so much pressure, right?
Yeah.
So I did go to my doctor and ask them in the beginning of 2019 about going to a fertility clinic. And so they referred me, and I did go. The first clinic I went to is in Yorkville. So if you're not in Toronto, then I'll just tell you that it's a very ritzy part of town. Where most of the stars will stay when they come to TIFF and what have you. So that clinic did seem, a little bit more it was very, very beautiful inside, and you felt like you were having an experience in that clinic. But the doctor that I saw, and so again, I was 42 already in 2019, and this was in June. So yeah. So she said, okay, well, you don't have any bad history, everything looks good inside. And so let's try, like you said, IUIs. She wanted to try 3 IUIs unmedicated before she would talk about IVF with me, right? So IVF is in vitro fertilization. So at that time, I also joined a Facebook group. And so thank God for Facebook groups, because I feel like I learned so much from them. I have so many friendships in them. And so there are some Facebook groups for SMBCs in Toronto or Canada. So SMBC is single mother by choice. So it can either be SMBC or SMC. And thankfully, I was in these groups. I joined these groups, and then I started to read posts about it. And I did also check, and I saw that in Ontario, we do get 1 free IVF cycle up to 42 years old. So seeing I was already 42, then I asked at the clinic if that was necessary, because I was 42 and I wanted to do my free IVF cycle. And that particular clinic, every clinic has a cutoff of how many free ones they get. So that clinic had already reached their cutoff for that year. So from the Facebook group, I was able to see, there's only like 3 or 4 big clinics here in Toronto. So I was able to see a couple of the other clinics still had space. So I phoned them, and I was able to get in for IVF. So before I did that, I did do 1 IUI at that first clinic I was at. It was not successful. And then I went to the second clinic for IVF, where I was really thrilled because I got a doctor who is also of South Asian descent. And so I felt like she really understood me, and we had a really great rapport. So there I did the IVF egg retrieval. I did in November of 2019. And then I did 1 transfer. So I ended up having 3 embryos, which had survived the process. And so I did 1 transfer with 2 embryos the first time. So that was in December of 2019. And neither of them stuck, as we say. And then I had 1 more that was still in storage. So then COVID happened. And I was also just waiting to give my body a bit of a break, because as you know, I'm sure too, Renee, it just takes such a toll on you. So I was trying to, wait a few cycles anyways. And also my job was on the road. So I was on the road all the time for work, and having to, work out when could I go to the clinics, when could I, keep up all of these procedures I had to do, which was really tough. So then a year ago, March 2019, when, we were grounded now because of COVID, then I was able to think, okay, when do I want to do my last transfer for that embryo? And you actually have to pay for embryo storage. There's so many fees associated with this, right?
Yep.
So my embryo storage was going to be up in November of 2020 because that was a year from when I had my procedure. So I knew I had to do my last transfer by November 2020 because I didn't want to pay for another year. So I did the last transfer in October, and that was unsuccessful. So at that time, then I talked to them, and I'm going to be putting myself onto the list for embryo donation. So that's if there is an embryo there that, you know, that person has completed their family, then
Right.
they can make a donation of that
Oh,
embryo
wow.
to you. Yeah.
Nice.
So at that point, then it's not your DNA at all, right? It's that
Mhm.
person's DNA and whatever the male DNA is.
Yeah.
And but you can still, you know, just be the uterus for that,
Right.
right? And then you have give birth and what have you as like it's your own. So I am going to go on that list, but I am more interested in adopting at this point
Okay,
too.
cool.
Yeah, but it is very tough for single people to do that financially, and then just logistically, because, you know, I have a condo, it's 1 bedroom plus den. But if I wanted to, I would prefer to, you know, take in some siblings
Right.
because I would like to have more than one child, ideally. But to do that, they do have some rules about, you know, how many rooms you have to have available for the children and what have you. So all that stuff becomes kind of it seems a bit impossible when you're single in Toronto,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think, you know,
Yeah.
I had my doctor actually is the one who suggested it, only because
Okay.
she knew I was single
Yeah.
and I had medical challenges. So at first she said, "Oh, you're young, you know, you got time." And then I had my first medical issue, and then she's like, "Well, you better get on that." And I said, "How? I'm not. My name is not the Virgin Mary." And she said, "Oh, well, you know, you could check out across the hall. Her buddy, there's the fertility doctor." And so I thought about it, and I mentioned it to one of my friends, Jane. Shout out, Jane. And Jane had a friend who had just done it. She was pregnant with twins, and so I said,
Okay.
"Let me just talk to her and see what it entails." So I had a quick conversation with her, and I said, "Okay, let me check it out." So I met the fertility doctor, and then I got hooked up with the it's the oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. But they hold all the donors.
Oh, the sperm bank.
The sperm bank. Thank you. Jeez.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so then it became the old, okay, you
Let me
know,
choose someone.
let me choose someone. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, going through the library and, you know, kind of going back to our last conversation around all the different things you're looking for in a man. Now you're doing it with a sperm
Right.
donor.
So let me
And
ask you, since you're talking about that.
yeah,
So you probably did this 10 years prior to me doing it
yes,
right?
I did in my
So
30s.
okay, so about that time, what did you find in terms of diversity in the sperm bank?
There was diversity. It was
Okay.
real. Yeah, I had my choices were, it was a Caucasian, I had a black man, and I think it was a Filipino. Those are the
So
three
you
that
had 3 choices?
those are the three that I nailed.
You narrowed it down to.
Narrowed
Okay.
it down to.
From like hundreds, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And when it came to actually saying, okay, this is the one that I want, then the Caucasian was out of stock, and then it was the black man, the black donor.
Yeah.
That one was available, so I tried that one, and
Right.
then it didn't work, and then I tried the Filipino one went out of stock, and then another white guy came in later on. So I just kept trying what was available, and there was the washed or unwashed and all that,
Yes.
all
Yeah.
that shenanigans.
Yeah.
But again, it was something that I set aside my money for.
Yeah.
So I knew I had the money for it. I didn't want to be a burden on my mom or anything like that if I was able to do this. My mom and my sisters totally supported it. So it was good. You know, I felt good. And my thing was really, it was my willingness to have a child, but I knew that my body was eventually, that window was closing.
Yeah.
So I did 3 inseminations and they didn't work. And then I did the 4th one, but it was with needles, giving yourself the shots.
Okay.
I was trying not to do because I was so, I'm a total, I hate needles. And now I
Yeah.
have to give myself needles, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was the annoying every day to go into the doctor's office and get, blood work. And of course, they can't find my veins. All the women in the waiting room were always mad. They were trying to get ahead of me because
Oh
I
my
would always
goodness.
take long. So it was just drama galore. And I remember, because maybe I'll ask you after, but how was your emotional state after
Mhm.
it didn't work? Because I thought, now when I look back at so many years later, I was thinking, oh, I guess I got over it pretty fast. I think I did it because I didn't want to get to a point in my life where it was woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like I'm
Right.
50 years old and I'm thinking maybe I should have done it when I had a chance. I didn't want to get there. So I
Right.
said, let me try it now. If it doesn't work, that was God's plan and I'll move on.
Right.
But funny to say, in preparing for the show, I found a book that I
Mhm.
started to write to the
Oh
baby.
wow.
It was something that I wanted to write, and I found the book and I was reading. I'm like, oh my goodness! I read it last night, and there was in the notes I had that I was in tears after the third fail
Yeah.
try, and I was in tears after the fourth. And for the life of me, I cannot remember being that emotional about
Mhm.
it. So
Mhm.
how did you fare through the
Well,
failed
I think
attempts?
here's the thing. I'm trying to work on manifestation and what have you now in my life, right?
Yes.
So that coming with that is positive thinking. However, for this whole thing, I knew I was 42 and the chance of it working, the first clinic, the doctor told me the chance of you getting pregnant, period, is 5 to 10%.
Right.
And right, even IVF, it only goes up to 15. So knowing those numbers, and I'm practical,
Yeah.
I'm not a dreamer, I'm practical.
Mhm.
So I just never thought it was going to work. Like that's the
Mm.
mindset I
Oh,
went into.
okay.
Yeah. I didn't let myself hope for it.
Ah, okay.
I think that that's the difference. So no, I haven't cried about it. And I also have so many friends who are also experiencing infertility and they're married and they can try every month if they want to, right?
Right.
For no cost. So, and they're younger than me. They're all younger than
Mhm.
me. A lot of them are in their 30s or some are even in their 20s. Some of them they're able to conceive, but then they can't sustain the pregnancy or,
Mhm.
they have multiple miscarriages, what have you. So it's, yeah, I feel like it's just not working is not the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, and honest
Honestly.
to goodness, I look back and again, shout out to all the women going through it right now
Mhm.
that are devastated and are just really super sensitive around this topic. But yeah, I look back on my life and I praise God every day. I said, you had a plan because I wouldn't have the life I have today. Like I'd
Right.
probably still be in Toronto, probably still in my family home
Yeah.
because I love the baby would have had that interaction with her aunties and her
Right.
grandma, and I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't have seen the world and the travels and been able
Yeah.
to go to the US and live here. I'm thankful because it wasn't for me. And now
Mhm.
I have my niece and my nephew, and I'm able to love on them and spoil them and
Yeah, see, that's the
have it
thing,
that
because
way.
you have family, you have kids in your family, I think that that fulfills something, like I have my friends' kids, but it's not like I have kids in my family nearby,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So that's the part I feel like is difficult. And yeah, and I also wanted to just mention about going back to when you were talking about the sperm bank.
Hmm.
Um, I found that well, I'm sure that you found the same, but you chose some people who were minorities, right? Ethnic
Hmm.
minorities to be in your list. So I found that, like, say out of 100 people, that they were not like 97 white people and like 3 everything else,
Right.
right? Like that was, so I felt like, because I wanted a child ethnically like me, so then I only wanted to look for South Asian donors,
Hmm.
and I had, I think, 5 to choose from.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I did look through other types of Asian, and I did look through because a lot of the sperm comes from the US, they also have it classified as like Latin American countries and what have you, right? So I did look through all of those as well. In the end, I did try to always choose South Asian, but I really felt like, wow, I could see that because this is so expensive, this whole thing, there are not a lot of BIPOC women doing this or even considering it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a stigma behind it too of the that single Black mother, right?
Right.
And I actually when I was quick story before we close this segment, but when I was in the waiting room for with the other women as we were coming in every morning, after my third try, my doctor then said, well, let's try one more time with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started to get give her the shade eye or the side eye, because I'm like, you're making money hand over fist whether this works or not. And there were several women in the room who were like doing the same thing too. You could see we struck up a conversation.
Yes.
And a lot of them felt, at the end of the day, it's like my doctor's getting a kickback. She's getting it. The donation center's getting it. Everybody's making money on this, and we're the ones that have nothing to show for it except less money in the account. So
yeah, it's a very it's not an ethical thing to make money on, honestly, because especially I feel like I was in a better position being single because there's only me who has to like have testing, couples will come, it's mostly couples there, obviously your experience, right?
Yeah.
And couples have to get so many things tested. It might be the man and it might not be. And,
can she carry or not?
Yeah. Did you have to go for counseling as well?
No, I think my doctor, she knew that I was doing it 100% because my body eventually would probably deceive me.
Yes.
So she was, and I told her, she was like, she was good. She was like, making sure financial stability to do it.
Yeah.
And emotionally, like, who was my support? And I told her, I have my family support. I have the finances. I had saved up a lot of money, which I eventually bought a truck with. When it didn't work, sorry. But I had enough money set aside because, again, I didn't want that to be a burden.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really like that they do make you see a counselor now.
Good.
Just for one session. Before you start anything, you have to see a counselor, which was really helpful because they go through with you how to use the correct terminology. Like what would you say when someone says who is the child's father? You always say donor. Nice. And like you should never lie to the child about how they were conceived and things like that. That I think before our generation, people did lie about that.
Yeah. A lot.
Right? Because it was not seen as something that people talked about. And for men, if, there's something wrong with their contributions, then I don't know, like they really take that really seriously and to heart, right? So I do know people who like they did have to use donors, but the children don't know that they have donor parents,
Right. Yeah.
That's because, and they were actually counseled to not tell them. So it's really interesting. That things are now changing. And I think that's a big plus because I did join some donor conceived children forums as well on Facebook just to read about, what they feel like being donor children. And most of them, the only times that they feel upset or anything is when they think about being lied to.
Yeah. My friend actually did that, and her daughter's adorable. But she belonged to a Facebook group of all the women with the same donor.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're all like siblings.
Yeah, and that appealed to me too, being an only child, right? Because I was like, oh, that would be great if that person ended up being a donor for more children. Exactly. They would have a little family already.
Indeed. All right, so we're gonna take a pause for the cause. Get ready for our last segment.
All right,
and we'll be back.
Let's do it.